In the spring of 2025, Apple did something it almost never does. It didn't tweak the ad. It didn't quietly add a disclaimer. It deleted overnight. No explanation. The commercial had aired for months. Tim Cook on stage. Siri understanding your mom's flight number, reading your calendar, juggling your apps. It looked like the future. People bought iPhones based on that promise. And the reason it vanished? Because the feature in the ad didn't exist. What followed was $250 million lawsuit. A public admission that the AI overhaul was, and I'm not quoting Apple executive here, ugly and embarrassing. And the delay that kept getting pushed, 2025, then 2026, then maybe 2027. This is the story of how the company that invented the AI assistant ended up years behind the ones it inspired. And here is the part nobody talks about. Apple saw it coming at every step and shipped the ad anyway. To understand what went wrong, you have to go back to October 2011. The day Steve Jobs died, Apple had just announced Siri. Jobs had personally called Siri's co-founder, Doug Kittelhaus, and spent 3 hours persuading him to sell. The acquisition, roughly $200 million, was one of the last major decisions Jobs ever made. He believed voice was the next interface revolution, not a feature, a platform. And for a brief moment, it looked like he was right. Siri launched on the iPhone 4S to genuine amazement. Nothing like it existed on Android. Google was scrambling. Amazon hadn't thought about home assistants yet. Apple had a 4-year head start in the most important interface shift since the touch screen. What it did with that head start is the story. Almost immediately after Jobs died, something shifted inside Apple. Siri stopped evolving at the speed it had launched. Kittelhaus left within a year. Co-founder Adam Cheyer left too. The original team's vision. Siri, as a true cognitive assistant, quietly narrowed into something more cautious. By 2013, the tech press had a running joke. Siri couldn't find restaurants. By 2015, Apple knew it had a problem serious enough that it acquired a UK startup called Vocal IQ, a company whose own blog that called Siri a toy. Apple bought the company that called its flagship product a toy, and still the pace didn't change. Here is where the story gets complicated. Because Apple's slowness wasn't stupidity, it was the product of a logic that made complete sense until it didn't. The logic went like this. Apple's core promise to its customers is privacy. Your data stays on your device. Apple doesn't mine it, doesn't sell it, doesn't use it to train models. That's the deal. The problem is that the most powerful AI systems in 2023 and 2024 are fundamentally cloud-based. They learn from billions of interactions. They get smarter by knowing everything about everyone. Apple's privacy architecture made that approach impossible. So Apple built around it on-device models, private cloud compute, a system designed to be smart without ever seeing your data. It was technically impressive. It was also slow, and it was falling behind. The rest of the industry didn't face this constraint. OpenAI had no legacy brand promise around privacy. Google already had your search history. Meta had your social graph. They could move fast because they had already made a different deal with their users. Apple has made the opposite deal, and now it was paying for it. By June 2024, Apple knew the gap was serious, and WWDC, it announced Apple Intelligence. The demos were polished. The vision was compelling. Siri that understood your personal context. Siri that could see what was on your screen. Siri that could take actions across apps. The ads started running. The iPhone 16 launched on the promise of this future. The features shipped, just not the ones in the ads. What arrived were writing tools, custom emoji, notification summaries, and ChatGPT integration that felt exactly like what it was, a shortcut. The Deep Siri overhaul, the part that made the whole strategy make sense, wasn't ready. Internally, Apple engineers discovered that the architecture they had built, what they called V1, couldn't reach the quality bar Apple needed. They had to scrap it and start over. Meanwhile, the ad was still running. In March 2025, Apple pulled the ad and admitted the delay. Bloomberg reported that executives described the situation in an internal meeting as ugly and embarrassing. The head of Siri was removed from the project. Then he left the company entirely. The legal consequences came quickly. A class action lawsuit argued that Apple has misled consumers into buying iPhone 16s based on AI features that didn't exist. The National Advertising Division recommended Apple drop its available now claim for features that weren't. Apple settled for $250 million. No admissions of fault. The ad stayed deleted. But the deeper consequence isn't the lawsuit. It's the market shift that happened. Why Apple was rebuilding its architecture. By 2025, Gemini, ChatGPT, and Perplexity were all available on iPhones, downloaded by millions of Apple's own customers, used instead of Siri. The default assistant advantage, the one Apple had held since 2011, was eroding in real time. Google's revenue was growing 14% year over year, and its cloud and AI business far faster, up to 48%. Microsoft had shipped Copilot. Amazon had launched Alexa Plus. Meta has its own assistant embedded across every platform it owned. The combined capital spending by Apple's four main rivals hit roughly $380 billion in 2025 alone, nearly all of it going to AI. Apple spent $12.7 billion on capital expenditure that year, less than it spent in 2018. As of mid-2026, the fully upgraded Siri still hasn't shipped. The new target is 2027. That would put Apple's conversational AI approximately 5 years behind the current standard. Here is what makes this story different from a simple tale of corporate failure. Apple didn't fall behind because it ignored AI. It fell behind because of a decision it made in 2011 that seemed visionary at the time. Bet everything on privacy as a competitive advantage. That decision created a loyal customer base, regulatory protection in Europe, a genuine brand differentiator. It was the right call for a decade. Then the AI moment arrived, and the privacy architecture that had protected Apple became a cage. The companies that had made the opposite deal Give us your data. We will give you better services that trained their models on billions of interactions. Apple had protected your data so carefully that it couldn't use it either. The second order of the privacy bet was an AI deficit. Nobody saw it in 2011. It was invisible until 2024, and by the time it was visible, the gap was already 5 years wide. That's how second-order effects work. The consequences of the right decision made at the right time, showing up in the wrong place years later. Apple may still close the gap. The company has $3 trillion in market cap, the world's most loyal customer base, and a hardware advantage no AI lab can match. The story isn't over. But the window it had in 2011, the one Steve Jobs saw by his fireplace, the one that made him call a founders he'd never met and buy a company in 3 hours, that window is closed. And Apple was the one who built it.